Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual, and I'm joined by my co-founder and co-host, Paddy Mann. Morning, Paddy.
Good morning.
Morning. So, today we're looking at a major source of stress, your business finances. Many business owners aren't clear on how to effectively manage their finances without derailing other activities that they see as more important. This often leads to business owners not paying close attention and leads to a lot of stress and financial pain that could be avoided. So in this episode, we're going to open this challenge up. Why is it such a problem? What steps can you take to start getting on top of finances in your own business? So Paddy, let's start off with, what's the situation for many small business owners? What's the stress that they're feeling?
Cool. Well, I think this is something I can speak from a place of experience, having been through it in my own businesses, at least to some degree. And there's a range of stress points. I think the first is just kind of the lack of clarity. So you've got this area where there's just this fog, and you know it's important. You know you're meant to be looking over there, and yet there's this wall which seems impenetrable because you need to dedicate some serious time first into working out what the hell you need to be looking at, then working out how to do that, and then finally looking at those numbers and seeing if it actually makes any difference to what you're doing day to day. And so it's so easy, it gets deprioritized. You've got to do sales, you've got to make your product, you've got to deliver services. But it's there, this kind of underlying pain point of knowing there's something there which you should be paying more attention to. And then, of course, having not given it the attention it needs, there's just so many different stress points that can come out. And those can be fairly small ones. You know, you've got costs which you're not paying attention to. And so subscriptions are sitting there for months and years of paying $100 here and $50 there, and it's just wasted money, and it could have been caught so much sooner. But then there's much bigger ones, and there's kind of the obvious ones like not really getting on top of your bigger costs, like salaries, and being able to make the right decisions at the right times because you don't have that clarity. Not seeing when there are big risks that could threaten the very existence of your business. I've had real examples with businesses that my wife's worked in where they've had fraud, and they had someone internal. They had a finance administrator who they'd hired because the business owner was very much very entrepreneurial, didn't want to be looking at this day to day, and so entrusted basically the entire management to a finance administrator who siphoned off a block of the money every month into our own personal account. And this went on for years without being caught and cost them tens of thousands of pounds at a time when the business was struggling, at a time when the business was having to make redundancies, at a time when the employees were being rewarded with a profit share bonus. So this money that was being siphoned out was directly hitting everyone in the business. And it wasn't seen because there's kind of hands off. And then so you've got the small issues, you've got these bigger issues that can go uncovered, and the lack of decision making. And then there's this really big one for a lot of small business owners, which is you work hard for a long time, and you slowly start to get traction, and you start scaling up your business. And on the outside, all your friends and family go, "Oh, okay, wow, this person's got a few employees, and now they've got 5 employees, now they've got 10 employees, now they've got 20 employees." And yet, somehow you're not paying yourself anything extra. Somehow, all the money that comes in, there's a lot more revenue, but it's not getting realized into a quality of life benefit for yourself. And if that's not happening, then what the hell? Why bother?
Absolutely. I think, as you say, like, there are so many causes of stress in this area, and I think it's an area that's a classic worry for most business owners, and yet something that is often abdicated. It's something that that a lot of business owners don't want to touch. It's not why they went into business, was not to do their bookkeeping and be on top of their accounts and look at profit and loss statements and try and understand a balance sheet or a cash flow statement. Like, these are not exciting reasons to go into entrepreneurship, but they are the language of business. They are how you understand what's going on and where the money is made and lost, and what your opportunities are and what the risks are. And so I think that's that sort of hard paradox, is that I think all business owners would appreciate that, yes, it's important, and yet it's, for some, it fills them with dread. And for others, even if it doesn't fill them with dread, like, they kind of don't know where to start and what to do about any of this. So take us into, like, how would a business owner resolve this? How would they address some of these stresses and and some of the challenges that we've just been talking about?
Cool. So, as you'd expect, there are some processes that you can put in place to address a lot of these pain points. And finance processes may sound like a very dull and the very thing that you're trying to avoid even having to think about. But another way that I really like that this can be expressed is basically the processes are good habits. And you know, when you look at your personal finances and your business finances, that if you have good habits around how you manage this, ultimately you're going to see a much bigger impact from everything else you do. You're going to see that your finances are in a good place, that they're managed. You're going to be able to make better decision making. You're going to avoid all these things which, when they're not seen, they not only are literally taking money out of your business, but when you then uncover them, cause a huge kind of huge problem. So imagine that fraud. That was something that could have been picked up with a process put in place, which was a quick review, week to week, or even quarter by quarter, just to look at what was happening in the accounts. And instead, they're suddenly dealing with this major PR issue, an issue with all their employees being frustrated and annoyed, massive legal implications about whether or not they take this person to court. Huge derail for their business, which is massively bigger than it could have been resolved with good habits put in place sooner. So some examples of good habits is you need to treat finance as a part of your business, as a team. Even if you are sitting in the business on your own, or you've only got a very small team of 5 people, and you may be wearing multiple hats, so you may be the CEO and the COO and the head of sales. Someone, and ideally, the business owner in the small business, also needs to be in that finance meeting, leading it and having that head of finance role. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do every little nitty-gritty task, but you do need to have that high-level overview. And then the habit to have is to have a weekly or bi-weekly team meeting where you make sure that the numbers, the most important ones, are being reviewed. You're making sure that red flags are spotted early, and that you are slowly making progress. Not that you have to do everything at once, but that you are making progress each month. Other good habits would then be to have a quarterly review to make sure you're looking at your bigger kind of goals and how it helps the rest of the business. Having a month-end process just to make sure that everything happens on time, that you're not missing payments to employees or vendors, that you actually have clarity on where you've got to. The profit first process is a great one. There's a book by the author Mike Michalowicz on the problem I described earlier around scaling up your business and not discovering that you've got any more money, that your quality of life isn't improving. And he introduces a process where each time you review your finances each month, you take the profit from your revenue and you put that aside first before paying off all your expenses. And it instills good practices, and it forces you to basically make sure that you are allocating part of the profit to rewarding yourself as you scale. And you kind of have two options here. You could either do this and enjoy a better quality of life, and it's something we've done in our own businesses and was a transformation. The impact that it had for us, it literally overnight changed us from being stressed and not seeing any rewards to actually seeing some business success and being much more motivated for the business. And it's it's a really simple, small habit which you can embed in that monthly process, and it will literally just turn your, turn your finance management around. It's incredible. And then the quarterly review of your profit and loss, just to look in detail at where you're spending your, where you're doing your monthly, where you're spending your money on vendors, services, and so on, and just doing that quick review to go, is there anything here which is surprising? And that's where you would dodge that fraud. That's where you would see the subscriptions that are sitting there unused after 6 months. That's where you would go, oh man, we're spending a lot of money on that marketing person that we've hired, and yet we're not actually seeing results. And you can use that to make decisions and save your costs and make your business more successful.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really interesting that those processes, those recurring tasks, I think make such a difference. And to some extent, you have to build them up over time, as we did with things like our Profit First process, needing to do allocations of cash and move things into literal separate bank accounts that represent those different things, made a huge difference in terms of our, as you say, our ability to get paid, but also have good visibility of how things were going month to month, and whether there was enough money for expenses. But of course, the mechanisms, like the actual specific things you need to do, can sometimes be either a bit mundane or actually a little bit complex or tricky or fiddly. And so, particularly I think in finance areas, yes, there are things that need to be done on a regular basis, like maybe it's your bank reconciliations. We tend to do them multiple times per week now. I think back when I was doing, and that's a finance administrator doing it probably 3 times per week. I think when I was doing it, I was probably doing it once a week. And some business owners will be doing it once a quarter, or even later on in the year, and going, oh my God, I've got a big pile of them. And if you're not sure, by the way, bank reconciliations is literally just in your account saying, this money that shows in my bank statement that has moved or been paid out, this is what it was for. And in tools like Xero, which we use for as our accounting system, like there are tools that make that a bit easier. But there's quite a lot of complexity. There's what you need to code to what account code, and what if it's in a different currency, and what if there were bank fees, and how do you process a different type of payment that a customer has made for 2 invoices in one total? How do you split that? And what if someone underpays or overpays, or all these sorts of things? There is complexity there, and I found as a business owner when I was doing it, I'd forget. Like I would have to learn, okay, yeah, if there's an overpayment, this is how I do it, and it would take me some time, and I'd do it. And then that might not happen for 3, 6, 12, 18, 24 months before it happens again. And then it derails me all over again. And I think where we really stepped out of all of that was documenting at that level of detail those processes, the bank reconciliations, the fortnightly paying of suppliers and employees, the month-end accounts including the profit first allocations, the quarterly VAT returns, the annual production of statutory accounts and R&D tax claims and so on, and having those in sufficient detail so it made it easy to do. And even for me, like in our businesses, I've been essentially the head of finance hat. It made it so much easier for me, but also, of course, made it possible for me to hand over each of those responsibilities and tasks over time, initially to existing members of our team, and then we hired a finance administrator who works part-time and supports us in that. And interestingly, you talked earlier on in the episode about the thousands of pounds wasted on subscriptions you aren't using, the tens of thousands of pounds on fraud and all these sorts of things. We have genuinely saved tens of thousands, possibly even it may even go to 6 figures now, with savings that finance administrator has identified or been able to prevent costs and so on. Like they have dug into, for example, a particular employer of record setup we had for a country in which we employ people, and found that the fees were particularly high. And she went through a series of processes as part of a process that we have for reviewing our costs, which meant that we were able to save, I think, about £25,000 a year just through some changes that were made there, which easily pays for that finance administrator and then some. Just in that year, never mind all the ongoing ones. And so I think the power of being on top of your business finances, it saves money, it reduces your risk, it gives you all of these benefits and reduces the stress and so on. And so I think having all of that in place is incredibly powerful. And as you say, it's not just the process activities, it's also the meeting rhythms, the fortnightly reviews, the quarterly reviews of your P&L and all that kind of stuff, which has made such a difference. And I think even thinking about it as if, like, as you grow your business, you want to get to a point where you're not having to do any of the day-to-day finance and that none of that is done. But you still don't want to abdicate that. You still will need some visibility. And so, like, one of the processes that we have is we have a monthly budget review meeting where the finance administrator, the COOs, CEOs are on a call reviewing against our key budget lines, what happened and was it expected and so on. And then as shareholders, Paddy and I, like, we have a quarterly review where we go deep, right? We go deep into all those cost lines, which would help us. I mean, it's not the only check and balance we have, but it is one way in which we're able to make sure that there isn't fraud in there. There aren't costs that we're not expecting. That even, and we talk about fraud in terms of employees, even each other, that we know what's going on in our respective parts of the business and so on. So I think having those, like, creates that sanity and calm where you can then just relax in between those meetings, right? So I absolutely love that. And so, but I've talked there about a number of different processes, and you talked about a number of different meetings and so on. For a business owner that's not doing anything right now, like, where should they start? What would be the first good step in the right direction?
Cool, yeah. When we start going into it and you start going, oh man, we've got all these processes, and over the years they've kind of piled up, and they put all these checks and balances in and make sure that we don't have major issues. Also, there's quite often these cases where for all the things that we want to do with sales, marketing, improving our product, the number one thing that we could do to increase our profit and our quality of life and the quality of life of our employees is actually something financial. Introducing profit first was one time, but there have been other times. Most businesses, when they go into a recession, have this sudden need to look at their costs, and so it finally gets prioritized, and the cost savings that they make are as big as or bigger than the sales targets or the growth targets that they were setting for the same period. And the only thing that was blocking it was not paying attention, not looking into it, because it's not as exciting, it's not as fun, and it tends to give us a headache. I'm not going to say that I enjoy all of these tasks. I do not look forward to our quarterly P&L review meeting, but it is worth it, and I know that it's worth it because I've seen the other side when it doesn't happen. So you're in a business and you don't have anything in finance at all at the moment, or you do have finances. Perhaps you've got an external accountant, or you've got someone you hired to do some of the bookkeeping, but you don't personally have clarity on how that works. And the thing is that ultimately has to change, and it's not unique to finance. This is going to be the same. Like, if you are the business owner, you have to have you personally need to do it, or you need to have someone on your executive team who you trust through thick and thin, who has real clarity of how each area of your business works. The same is true for marketing. You can't just delegate and expect wonders to happen. There needs to be someone at the executive level who has that clarity on how it works and how to manage it. The same is true with engineering, and there's so many stories out there of where people have tried to do that outsourcing, and it works okay to do some of the tick boxes each period, but you can't address the issues. You don't know how to challenge it. You don't know when it's been done well and when it's been done badly. So ultimately, you need to take this step at one point. and put yourself in those shoes and put on the head of finance hat. And if you are doing this and you don't already have someone else who's helping with finance, then I'd also encourage you to try and find one other person who is going to support you. And there's going to be two reasons for that. One, they'll help to take some of the tasks, and you're going to be able to start learning how to delegate some of the activities that need to happen each time. And that's particularly great if you're really busy. It's going to be difficult for you to perhaps update dashboards or fill in various forms or whatever on time. So really good for delegating. Also really important because just by the fact that there's someone else there, that's going to hold you accountable to, for example, turning up to any meetings that you arrange. If you're completely solo, it's going to be incredibly tempting to skip a meeting or two, and for that to suddenly become a bad habit. And that's what we want to avoid. So you've got your head of finance hat on. You've hopefully got someone else who's going to be helping and holding you accountable. You need to get your team meetings in the diary. Even if it's just you and one other person, or even just you need to treat it like a team. There needs to be this kind of recurring cycle where every week or 2 weeks you are looking in and going, are there any issues? Based on what I said in the last meeting, have we achieved the goals that we set out to achieve? And what problems now need to be fixed and prioritized? So put those meetings in the diary, probably just an hour every week or 2 weeks to start off with. Find a time that works and start reviewing those things. And then with the meeting and with you holding the sat, you've now got some resource and capacity to start opening up this area. And one of the first things you're going to need to do is just work out what are the most important numbers that I need to keep an eye on. So how much money is in the bank account? How much runway do I have before we run out of cash? And so on. And initially, you're going to be, you may be in a situation where you're going to go, I don't know what those numbers are. I don't, not just that I don't know what those numbers are, but I don't know what types of numbers I should even be tracking. And that's okay, because now you've got your weekly meeting, and you've got a way of using that meeting to tackle issues. One of the first issues you're going to raise is we don't have a dashboard and we don't have the numbers. And there will be other issues where you go, I'm not being paid enough and so on. And you put them all in a linked long list, and you'll use that meeting to prioritize which of those needs to be tackled first. And we've got a great episode on one of our first episodes was about how to have a team meeting and how to use that to tackle issues. So do go back to that episode for kind of guidance on how to use that team meeting really effectively to do this. But as you can start to imagine, it's not that you drop everything, that you've now got this major project on your hands. It's that you're now putting in this little good habit every week or 2 weeks to make progress, and you're using that time on the meeting to actually work out some of these challenges, like what numbers should I be tracking, how should that go, how should I track it. On a side point, I'd say make it really simple. You're on maximum 20 numbers, use Google Sheets or Excel, just track a number each week. And if you've got questions on this, and we'll probably cover it in other episodes, but feel free to drop us an email. But then start to tackle those challenges, and then just iterate. And over time, you will come around to that challenge of, we're not being paid enough, even though we've got 6 employees. And it might not have been the top one on the list at the start, but you've worked it through and you've worked out the dashboard, and you've solved some issues where vendors aren't being paid on time, and you've solved some other issues, and you get to some of the meaty ones, and they can ultimately, transform your business, or they put in some of the new checks in place, and where you are checking expenses each month and avoiding those fraud, avoiding those things, and all of this kind of piles up. It's essentially this putting those initial habits in of the meetings and reviewing the issues in order to just start small and continuously improve. And that's how you need to do it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's, as you say, a great starting point, and overcomes that barrier of thinking that you have to put everything in all at once. You absolutely don't. And in fact, the biggest mistake that we see business owners doing with these sorts of areas is abdicating responsibility. It all feels too big. As a result, I'll just pass it over to someone else, like passing it all to the finance administrator in one of your wife's previous companies, where that's your individual wife, multiple companies, not multiple wives. I think, when you abdicate those things, the risk goes through the roof. And so having those regular check-ins, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, whatever it is, just as a starting point to start moving the needle is so important. I think that it's also worth saying that there are people out there who can give you guidance on how to get there faster. Certainly, I'd recommend speaking to our team. Like, we're really hot on finance processes, and indeed we can even share some of our own finance processes as templates that people can use as a starting point in their own business. Because one things with finance processes is they tend not to differ hugely business to business, or at least can work as a good starting point. But also, if you really want to up level yourself as a business owner in these areas, I'd say firstly I'd recommend a customer of ours, MBS accountants. They are absolutely fantastic at not only doing your accounting, your bookkeeping, and all the standard stuff that an accountant tends to do, but they're really hot on making sure that you've got the visuals of and the optics of your business and how things are working, and being able to actually review what does the last month, last quarter look like, and help you make decisions in your business. So I've really enjoyed working with them on their client onboarding processes. So I know that their client onboarding is really, really smooth, and that they work really effectively. So recommend MBS accountants. I'd also recommend for larger businesses. So I think I think the minimum requirement is $250,000 in revenue. But do check out Dan Bradbury and his mastermind group. Another customer of ours. We're supporting them with their processes and operations and onboarding and so on. But they're particularly fantastic. I mean, it's a very good generic business mastermind, but one of the areas that I've always felt they excelled is around their getting to grips with the finances and understanding all of that. And I think they even do like a skills day on getting to grips with finances. It may or may not be free, so reach out, or I'll connect you or whatever if you're interested in that. So highly recommend people that are out there that really get this and can give you the shortcuts as well. But whatever you do, don't abdicate from the responsibility. Now, as regular listeners will know, we also run a weekly webinar on how to free up 15 hours per week and remove the constant stress of running a business without slowing down growth. For those of you that have been enjoying covering finance today but would like to cover something else, good news, that webinar doesn't really go into finances at all, but it's typically every Wednesday at 1 p.m. UK time. I think our very next one happens to be tomorrow, which at time of recording is a Thursday. But you can find out more and register for the next one at www.airmanual.co/webinar. And a final note for our podcast listeners: as a new podcast, we do need your help. If you found the content today valuable, please just take 1 minute to leave us an honest review. This will help the podcast get more visibility and ultimately help us to help more people. Otherwise, until next time, have fun.